Good evening and welcome to the big story on NDTV Profit. I'm Nupur Talwar Suri. 3 states in India, Tamil Nadu, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh have raised concerns of a decline in the TRF or the total fertility rate. The chief ministers of these states have flagged the fertility crisis that threatens to undo the demographic advantage that India has seen. Now, chief ministers of Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu are already talking of policy changes to encourage people to have more children. The chief minister of Andhra Pradesh has spoken of allowing only people who have 2 or more children to contest local body polls. Tamil Nadu's chief minister has used mythology to make his point. Now, a study that's been conducted by Lancet suggests that India, which is currently the most populous nation in the world, is set to see an alarming decline in fertility rates. In 1950, India had a fertility rate of 6.18 children per woman. That is projected to fall to 1.29 by 2050, dipping well below the replacement rate of 2.1. This evening on The Big Story, we look at what's driving this alarming trend. And we also ask you 3 big questions. Number 1, why are some southern states pushing for couples to have more than 2 children? Is the cost of raising children dissuading couples from having kids? And question number 3, what should India do to prevent going the European way? And to discuss more of this, we are now joined by Dr. Srinivas Goli, the Assistant Professor of International Institute of Population Sciences. Also joining me on the broadcast is Dr. Sangamitra Singh, Chief of Programs for the Population Foundation of India. Good evening, both of you, and thank you very much for joining us on the broadcast. Well, Dr. Goli, coming first to you, is what's happening concerning? Because at this point in time, we are only seeing 3 states talk about it. But do you think this is symptomatic of large parts of India, which now may be staring at a population decline, a decline in fertility rates, which can be very difficult to arrest?
Yeah, if you look at latest sample registration system report that is published by Office of RGI, Government of India, except 3 states, you can see the most states are in below replacement or around the replacement fertility. We are discussing more about only the South Indian states, but if you look at several North Indian, even the eastern state like Odisha and West Bengal, also have very low fertility rates, especially even if you look at the, and we're also looking at the overall, but if you look at the urban areas, Jammu Kashmir, Odisha, West Bengal, which have even around 1.1, which is very low, ultra low fertility. Okay. Yes, South Indian states have been under low fertility for very long time. That's why we are discussing more about South Indian states. But this phenomena has also been prevalent in North Indian state that we need to also give attention. That Himachal Pradesh, Jammu Kashmir, West Bengal, Punjab, Haryana, Odisha, Maharashtra, all these states now have very low fertility.
Right.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Now, except Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, I think there is no medium, there is no high fertility state in India at present. And even medium high also only Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So most all of the states are below replacement or at the level of replacement.
Right. Dr. Singh, to you now, are we also perhaps seeing a demographic shift, which is at this point only visible perhaps in the south? As you know, we've had the Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister come out and say that they are dealing with an aging population. They also have a problem that's compounded by the fact that a lot of people are, from their state at least, are migrating. But what kind of a demographic shift are we seeing in India?
Right. So the demographic transition that you just talked about, it varies from state to state, and Dr. Kohli just described that. In a nutshell, different states in India are in different stages of demographic transition. The southern states managed to stabilize their population way early on. And as opposed to the South Indian states, if we look at UP and Bihar, where fertility rates are still very high, the population is relatively younger. Is there a way to avoid this natural process of demographic transition in a country? I would say no. The big advantage, and I would say the uniqueness that India has, as opposed to a lot of other aging economies today, as we see in Europe or Japan and other countries, is the fact that in one country, we have these diverse stages of demographic transition within, the same country. The North versus the South. I mean, we're constantly pitting the two against one another. I think what we need to really focus on right now is that the North has the demographic advantage that the South can benefit from, given that today their population is largely aging.
Right. And Dr. Singh, what do you see as the primary reasons for this red flag to be raised now? Is it the fact that there is an economic, the economics of raising a child perhaps is one of the challenges that young couples are now looking at?
Yes, of course. Raising a child is definitely very expensive. If we look at statistics also, on an average in a government institution, you would be spending, at least 1,000, 1,500 rupees a month for preschool education, and going up to 12, 13,000 or 15,000. And this I'm talking about very, very moderate average rates in private institutions. And senior secondary education, college education is extremely expensive. There are other costs. There are healthcare costs. There are so many other costs that are really associated with raising a child. However, one factor that I would like to raise over here is that raising a child in a country like India, where gender equality is still so pervasive, puts majority of the burden on the woman. So the caregiving burden is also largely on the mother. And that is also a result of the prevalent social norms, the way patriarchy has really manifested in the country for so many years. And if we really want to address the root cause of this variance that we talk about between, we often see that it's said that women who are more educated, there is an inverse relationship between their fertility rates and the number of children they have. I think we should be looking at this positively as well, because, a few decades ago, when fertility rates were high in India, there was a there was an inverse correlation with the education levels, the empowerment levels. So southern states have also made a lot of investments in their gender equality initiatives, education of women, healthcare infrastructure, and fertility rates are declining because of that.
Right, fair point you make there. Let me also welcome Dr. Sharda, the Director of Population First on the show. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Sharda, we were earlier talking about the fact there are 3 southern states who have raised the red flag over fertility rates. But do you think part of the problem has been that we've not been able to study this properly? Because till a few years ago, everybody in India was talking about the fact that we are seeing an explosion of population. We need to control it. We need to go the China way. Look at China, how they've, had this one-child policy. And now suddenly you come across to people and say, listen, there was a problem with China and we want to counter that before we reach that stage. So you think that there has been a bit of a problem in the long-term view that governments have had?
Yeah, definitely, because demographic transition has different stages. And considering the differences in the development of the various states, as I heard the other speakers say, we have different different states at different demographic transition levels, stages. For instance, Kerala has achieved replacement level fertility or TFR of less than 2 around in late 1980s. So it is having what you call almost static population, whereas other states have achieved that level recently, say in the last 10 years or so. So they are still in the what you call a stage where the population is increasing because of the large base of young people. Okay, so demographic transition is like this: like you put a break by having 2 children per family, but because your base population is more, it takes almost 20-30 years for the population to reach a replacement level fertility. So it is not that today we have 2 people per person, so our population is not increasing. It is not correct. It takes time for the population to come to a stall or not increase in numbers, because of the previous, like 20 years back, our fertility was high. So we have a large number of children who are now producing children. So the population is, even if they have a TFR of 2.1, still the population will increase for some time. So this is the issue. And yes, there are various ways in which this problem is addressed. One of the things is internal migration. You have to depend on migration from other states if you don't have enough number of young people to be in the workforce. So there are many reasons why politicians are speaking this language now. First is the political issue, that if they have less number of people, then they will have less representation in the parliament. So they would like to increase the population. But even if everybody has 3 children now, they will, at least it will take 20-21 years for them to actually show in terms of their political power or more people voting for them or whatever it is. But then number of seats in parliament, they would like to have more people so that proportionately their representation increases. And if their representation increases in the parliament, then they will get more resources for their own states. And second thing is that it is also a question of fear of migrants. And when you depend on, because there is Bihar, UP and other states are labor surplus and development is not so much in those states, those people migrate to southern states and other states, Punjab, Haryana, where there is work for them. So instead of looking at it as an opportunity, many people see it as a threat, because they feel that their cultural practices and all those things are being compromised. So they don't want to have these migrants coming and working and they say they're taking away their jobs. But if you look at Bombay, all our lives run smoothly only because of the migrant, or mostly because of the migrants. So it is not that migrants are bad for economy, but the fact is that migrants are seen as a threat to the cultural identity of the native population. And also sometimes there are fears that they bring in more crime and other things to the city. So these are all sort of misplaced fears, but they are also behind this new clamor for having larger families.
Right, absolutely. So you seem to suggest that there is obviously politics at play as far as the South is concerned, but we can't ignore the larger problem that we are seeing across the world. And if India were to take a cue from that, we do have some bit of a problem to worry about. I wanted to come to you, Dr. Goli, now. Dr. Goli, is the gender ratio in India also part of the problem? So, for instance, China, one of the reasons for their rapid decline in population was the ratio of men is to women, because people were only allowed to have one child in China. So that led for a lot of families to try and opt for having a boy child. So that brought about a rapid decline in the number of women. So do you see that also as something that triggers fertility rates to decline?
No, actually, if you look at our skewing of a sex ratio, male skewing of a sex ratio, which is coincides with the fertility decline. When the sex selective abortions are accessible, sex detection technology was accessible, when the fertility was started declining around 90s, and that's the same time when, of course, onset of fertility transition is in 1976, but it was faster declining around the 90s and 2000s. So the access to prenatal diagnostic tests were available around 90s. From there, you can see more male skewed sex ratios. So when there is when there was a high fertility, there is a chance of having at least one boy, being naturally without any altering in the sex of the birth. But when you have to go for only two-child policy, especially during the two-child policy, it was much more, the skewing of child sex ratios has happened. That's the reason why the most states quickly have gone out of the two-child policy. There are 13 states. Four states have immediately gone out of it. Even you can see in Haryana, a lot of cases have been fought against it. At present, now even Andhra Pradesh recently gone out of it, and there are many states now out of 13. There are many states gone out of the two-child policy. Yes, when the fertility declines, and definitely sex ratio tended to skew. Even our recent project in Haryana also says that, though we have very strict about our PCPNDT, but there are always ways to go for sex selective abortions. Even people going to outside India and people going to other states, even though Haryana is very strict about it, but then people are going. And there are also even hand-in kits have been available for the prenatal diagnostics tests. So that's the one reason why, despite education, like a lot of gender empowerment measures, education, other socioeconomic development, still the sex
Right.
ratios tended to skewed. And but one thing there, because being a demographer, I have more
Right.
scrutinized minute analysis. So if you look at today, see the TFR of Kerala, just one state example I'll give. It is reached replacement level fertility in 1997. From 1997 to till now, the TFR of Kerala is being stalled or oscillating around 1.5 to 1.7. So, the one important reason why it is still stalling there is the sun preference. Today, my own analysis along with my students, what we are doing, with the analysis that we are presenting at a different levels shows
Absolutely.
that if there is no, in absence of sun preference, the TFR is as low as 1.2 or 1.1.
Okay, so that's a
Okay.
very valid point that you make. I wanted to now bring in Dr. Singh again. Dr. Singh, you spoke about the rigidity of gender roles in India, and in that context, we see more women entering the workforce, and that is perhaps one of the reasons why we are seeing a decline in fertility. But how do you think the government needs to change its policy with regards to that? Should access to childcare be made more available? What are the incentives that the government can give, especially to women, given the rigid roles that women see in India?
Right. So to respond, I'd like to start by saying that you cannot really address the population issue, so to speak. We don't really look at this whole thing as an issue to begin with. Like the other panelists have also said, we're just in a certain stage of demographic transition. Every state is in a certain state of demographic transition. It's not good or bad, it's inevitable. If the government actually wants to take care of the situation, they have to make policies and programs which address the needs of the population. So if we are looking at southern states, then the need of the hour right now is to address the needs of the aging population, invest in social security measures, geriatric care, etc. If we are talking about women entering the workforce who of course need help, need support raising their child. Yes, of course, we need shared paternal leave policies. We need to be more flexible with maternity leave, with creches, but we need to inherently address and transform the social norms which exist in society. We will never be able to deal with the population scenario in a particular state by being so reactive. We can't be taking measures which react to the fertility rate and then sort of put the entire burden on women. So when fertility rates are low, we say that women have more children. When fertility rates are high, we say that women should have less number of children. I think what we need to do as a society is to enable them, empower them to be able to decide if, when, and how many children they want to have. And maybe some women want more children and the others want less number of children. I don't think policies can really dictate fertility for women.
That's a very valid point. We need to empower them to make the right decisions. Coming to you next, Dr. Sharda, what's your view on that? Obviously, we are looking at the European countries as well as, say, for instance, South Korea, which has seen a huge dip in fertility rate, put out incentives for people to try and have larger families. There are, of course, tax breaks being given. All sorts of things are being talked about. How do you think this plays out in India's context?
I would like to, take what the earlier panelist has said. That every time there is any kind of a population issue, we have the governments and the men and others taking decisions for women that they should have more children. If supposing, like for instance, they said anybody who has more than 2 children is not eligible for panchayat positions. That policy was there earlier, and it affected women more than men because women can never deny the child is theirs, whereas a man can always divorce her or say that I'm not married to her, whatever it is. Similarly, when the sex ratios are falling, who are being targeted? It is the women. Their abortions, their issues, and then the pressure on women to produce a girl, a son in the family. Again, she is targeted. And now, supposing we have this policy, just assume that we'll have that, couple should have more than 3 children. Who is going to bear the burden of carrying the 3 children, delivering them, and then giving birth to them, taking care of them, and what about her own health and aspirations? So we are not really looking at how it is going to impact women because it's a political decision. And then when it comes to what needs to be done, it's generally a process where, along with economic development, women, girls, children cease to be assets. They become liabilities because we want to have more education for them, more investment in them, better lifestyles. So you feel, like you cannot have more than 1 or 2 children. So it's a good thing that if except in Kerala, in all other states where there has been some development, both social and economic, the fertility has fallen. So, and it's a natural process, it will move. And then when there is an aging population, and then we really need to invest, not just we need to invest in facilities for the senior citizens, health facilities, and for also to engage more women in economic activity. If you really want to have more economic growth, why is it that only 25% of women are in jobs? Less than 20%, I think, currently. So we have to make more women enter into the labor force, have more so that the economic development takes place. So these are certain things which the government has to look at, not just say that, okay, we are going to have aging population, so we need to, ask couples to have more children, which means ask the women to have more children, or our cultural identity is being lost, so we should have more children. That is not the way you address an issue. As earlier panelist has said, it's very reactive kind of a thing, and it is very, very deeply rooted in politics and cultural identity.
Absolutely.
So it is nothing to do with development, or it is not the issues, because if there are issues, you can always, I think if all women work, or a majority of women work, economic development is going to be
Absolutely.
tremendous.
Absolutely. So what you seem to suggest, all of you, is that we need a more holistic look at the population policies that are in place and how do we sort of deal with this issue if there is one. There appears to be one at this point in time. All three of you, thank you very much for joining us on The Big Story this evening. Well, with that, it is a wrap on The Big Story. Thank you for joining in, but do stay with us on NDTV Profit for more.